Vice Director since 2009. Oklahoma and Texas make up the ARRL West Gulf Division. In January, John was appointed as the West Gulf Director. Welcome, John.
Michelle, Mark, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate all of you showing up on Saturday morning just to see me, although I don't think that's what you did. As Mark had suggested, we talk about the league because this is a subject we talked about at Ham Holiday, and we have learned, the league has learned over a period of time, most of our members don't know what the league really does or what the directors do. And I'll start with the background. As all of you know, we're 105 years old. We are a Connecticut nonprofit corporation. We're 501c3. But what's unique about how the league operates is that it has a two-tier structure. We have a board of directors where you have directors and vice directors. And then you have field service. We have section managers and SECs and everyone down below. The backbone of what keeps amateur radio operating is the field service, section managers and the SECs. But the question is, what does the board do? Where does your $49 go? Unfortunately, it doesn't go to salaries because I get paid just as much as Kevin Odell, section manager, which is $0. But the board consists of 15 directors and 15 vice directors. And Michelle, if we can make this work, I'm going to try and put something up on the screen. Let's see if this will work. If it doesn't, we'll go back to just in regular presentation. Did anything show up on your screen other than my face?
No.
Okay, let's see if it works now.
No nuclear launch codes.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay.
There you go.
Anything show up?
Now you got a blank screen. There you go, picture. There's your house.
Okay. I wish. This is the league. We divided into 15 divisions, and as Michelle pointed out, the West Gulf Division is Oklahoma and Texas. We remained as a group despite an effort of several years ago, whereby it was proposed that we redo the division breakup. If you'll note, you've got the Hudson Division up here in the far northeast corner. It has equal votes with your vote.
What?
We have about 3 times the members the Hudson Division does. The proposal was to redo the divisions and break Oklahoma off of Texas. And this was what the proposal was. Oklahoma would move to Delta Division. David Woolwick, former director, and I opposed that because the 2 states the most presidentially prepared to pass it are Oklahoma and Texas. So we didn't want to separate an operating relationship we had for years. But these 15 directors, 5 are elected every 3 years. And on the current cycle, the director for the Pacific Division, Jim Teamster, is up for election. Dick Burton out of the Southwest. Out of Rocky Mountain is Jeff Ryan. Out of the Southeast, it is Greg Spratt. And we're standing for election here. The question is, what does this look like? I'm not going to switch back if you'll permit. Before I go what we do, let me show you what league this is. This is headquarters. That's the main building. It's built in '68. It is wearing out. This is headquarters in the winter, folks. A little start. Some of you belong to the Diamond Club and you have paid for bricks. This is where they're located in front of the building. and some people have paid for winches. The most famous part of the actual location is W1AW. And this is the interesting part, is this is the main panel that controls all the transmissions that we make. It is worth noting that that panel is a manually switched panel. League is not yet where some of you have stations electronically switched into this. We print there. Now, once I switch this screen back, if I can. Okay, that should be, we should back to the
We are.
ugly face.
Yeah, we are.
Huh? Okay. The board has the responsibility of seeing to it that the league or amateur radio actually continues in existence. Everyone in field service fulfills half of what we're required to do by statute, which is provide emergency communication in times of need. The board's job is to keep all of you funded and alive and keep people from taking away amateur radio frequencies. The board meets twice a year, January and July, normally in Newington, Connecticut at the headquarters building. There is a math problem that everyone must remember about the board. It's 15 directors. The magic number is 8. 8 determines the future of the league. What the league is responsible, what the board is responsible for, is maintaining all the programs, all the funding. If you look inside the boardroom, you have, of those 15 directors, the board is broken into committees. Each director must serve on a committee by the rule. The two key committees were, at least, administration and finance. Administration and finance does responsible for all funding, all advertising, anything related to finances. The second committee is Program and Services Committee. It does just that. It's responsible for every program we have, from DXCC down to supporting the Foundation for Scholarship. These committees are appointed by the President in January at the beginning of the year. The committee is the Ethics and Election Commission. It is there to make certain that there is nothing improper or unethical by any of the board members or any of the officers or any of the employees. The league has a president, a first vice president, a second vice president, and a first vice president, and an international vice president. The first vice president is equivalent to Mike Pence. Rick Roderick, the president, is my colleague, she has to do on weekends, I think. Then Rick Watt becomes president automatically. The league has a detailed backup system. What it does is so important. You have layers of responsibility. You have the president, the first vice president is in training to be president. Then you have the second VP behind him in case something happens. So that he had, because he is for the league with the World Radio Council, the ARRL, he got all the international meetings that determine how all the countries allocate amateur radio frequency. As you think, how many of you have heard about the 2-meter proposal for permits?
Say that
And I
again.
see hands.
You're breaking.
You broke up a little bit. Can you say that again?
I asked, let me see how many hands people in the audience have heard the French want 146, 148 assigned to aviation bands.
Yeah.
Okay. It goes, that effect from the French is not yet something that can run in hydro, but reminder that there is never any protection for frequencies. The league has, what's the old Larry Gapp song about all the gold is in California in a bank in somebody else's name? No, it's not. All the gold is frequencies that each one of us in the room have allocated to us. We have the largest block of paid-for frequencies of any group in the world. Only the military gets even close to that. These frequencies are worth $1 billion per kilohertz. One of the things that the league is constantly faced with is stopping people from buying frequencies or being hurled those frequencies. So they can do experiments. So a university put up a temporary station on for a professor. If the league ceases to exist, amateur radio will cease to exist. If you look, and I'm deviating a little bit from how the league works, but this is a point that comes because of the 2 meter issue. There are 155,000 members in the league. That makes us about the size of Midland, Texas. We're a small special interest group to the FCC, but because we are chartered under law to provide British communications, we are regionally protected. But if you look at us and think, okay, we're a U.S. organization, and this is all we do, but we amateur radio in the United States. No. The world looks at all of us to lead on amateur radio worldwide. When I was at Dayton this spring, I was late getting over to the meeting, and there was a gentleman standing outside the hotel who saw me and saw that I was wearing a red badge and said, "I work with you this evening." And I went. Neither one of us knew who it was. It turned out on the 25-minute drive that he was the owner, co-owner, second largest commercial production studio in Japan. But out of that conversation is that while we think no one pays attention to what amateur radio does at the league in the United States, they do. What he said is that Europe pays particular attention. They watch the league, they look to us for leadership. So what we do resonates throughout the world, what you do resonates throughout the world. So if we make a mistake, the world will flip. They support the league completely. They have national organizations, but the organization they look to the lead is the league. Let me go back and talk about this. As I said, we have the officers, the directors, and the vice director. The question is, why do we have vice directors? I'm sure you know. The vice directors this was set up about 60 years ago. The vice directors have training. The vice directors are to learn how the league works, be there, replace the director, back them up if something happens. And this sometimes happens. The director gets sick. Happened last David Wilby was not able to attend the meetings, so I took his place in the front row and acted as the director. The importance of the vice directors and the directors is you elect us. If there have been efforts and suggestions that you as members should not have the ability to elect. This was a major issue about 2 years ago, after Dave Sumner retired. The issue was remove the vice directors so you would not get to vote on them. It would leave only directors, and then the proposals that the existing structure of the board would be able to appoint a director if he stepped in on a retirement. That was an effort to take away the rights of each of you as a member to vote and control this organization. That failed. It was a very intense fight, but it failed. So the vice directors are there because when they wanted you to be able to elect you up to a director, you elect a director, but they also want you to be able to select the backup person to retire. That's the reason the vice directors are there. Let me go back to the committee structure. A&F handles every financial matter that the league deals with. Programs and services work on every DXCC, work on any award programs we have, Logbook of the World. That's their responsibility to develop, control it, and improve it. We talked about the Ethics and Election Commission. The other really important committee is the Executive Committee. That committee is elected by the board itself. The board decides who in that room are the best people to lead, because between board meetings in January and July, the Executive Committee operates the league. And there are 5 members elected every year. Current members are myself, Jim Teamster, Pacific, Bud Hipsley, out of the Roanoke Division, Fred Hoppengarten out of the Atlantic Division, and Tom Abernathy, I'm sorry, I said Fred Hoppengarten is out of New England, and Tom Abernathy out of the Atlantic Division. So the Executive Committee is the operating arm that's currently working. Anyone know how many employees the league has? Okay.
Didn't understand what you're
30?
saying, sorry.
Paid employees or
Not 30.
non-paid employees?
Michelle, say again?
Paid employees or non-paid employees?
We have no unpaid employees.
Just board members.
Second thing,
This is
87.
7?
We are budgeted
87.
87. And that's only 7 people working for all. We're budgeted for 103. We only have 87 currently, so we're a little short-handed. So when you call headquarters, if it takes a little bit to get someone on the phone, it's because we're short-handed. But 87 people, the building has been there since 1958, 30 directors, 30 members of the board, 15 directors, 50 vice directors. Talk about what league is responsible and directors were. The league makes money in order to support all of us through 3 avenues. 1, through publishing. We publish QST, and we derive money from the ads of the magazine. We derive money from the ads on the electronic and all that. We also publish books. This ad bought books. We actually make enough money to keep the thing off books. The most popular most popular book we have is the handbook. How many of you have a handbook? Raise your hands, I can see. There you go. Is the one that we sell the most of. We started last year publishing a 6-volume set. It sold out in December. The softbound version sold out in April. The new ones are being printed. If anyone wants a new handbook, as soon as they come out, you can order it because we expect them to sell out again. The third component of what keeps the league functioning are donations. If you look at the tax return for the league, which you can't, it will be published next week on the web. Approximately every year we go $15 million. Give or take a little bit. Generally, $1 million of that is donations from those of you in the room and from others. Some people give $1, 100, 500. We worry that we survive on the kindness of strangers. No, we survive on the kindness of the members. They make up the shortfall of the budget between the publishing returns and the monies that we make off membership. Membership is relatively steady at the moment. We raised the dues in the past. Every time we raise the due, there's a 22% decline in membership because the dues go up. Membership is beginning to cycle back up. Publishing is a major concern for every printed magazine in the country because people are going to advertising on the web. So advertising revenues are declining just for us as well as everyone else. Which is a major concern for the league is how do we replace those revenues? So the league has to determine how do we fund the organization, how do we fund what all of you do. So that's one critical function of the board and what we'll do. The donations are sought, that, we've had Dr. Club, people just give us money. We have efforts from development board officers to provide money from large donors. We're a $30 million asset organization. Most of that $32 million is secured money. We cannot spend it. We can spend only the interest off of it. The budget for league each year is $15 million. Again, about $1 million comes from donation. And I'll stop here. Anybody have any questions about how this operates and runs? Or you just want to make fun of me? It's okay.
Yeah, that will do.
The one other organization that's tied to the league is the ARRL Foundation. It promotes scholarships every year. Every scholarship we have is taken up. We don't have enough money for scholarships. Now, anyone want to guess how much money is the foundation? Michelle, I'll pick on you. How much money does the foundation have?
87,000?
400 million.
You get to look at that $1 million, I'm going to come see you this afternoon. It is $4 million.
4 million.
The foundation comes from donations that were allocated specifically for that foundation. $4 million is not really much money. The foundation was started 20 years ago, initially to support amateur radio satellite efforts. It has morphed over into giving scholarships. David Woolweaver, who was the West Gulf director, retired in January, was elected at the January meeting to be the president of the foundation. How many of you know Tim Duffy?
Yes.
Yeah.
He used to live here.
He used to live here.
Is in DX Engineering. Tim Duffy was also elected to the foundation. One of the major things we're going to try and do starting in the fall is start raising money for the foundation. $4 million is not enough to give enough scholarships to all the kids that we want to support and run through the STEM program. It's also not enough money to support special projects. If you want to look at a special project that ought to be funded that the league ought to be supporting, look at the bat pitch. We did prove with the last rains it flooded. Unfortunately, it floated out of its. And I believe, Mark, you may correct, it's my understanding it would take $150,000 to relocate it and cure the bat fish.
Well, that's only their portion that they have to come up with. It's going to take a lot more, I think.
2 million.
Okay. But, well, the league couldn't pay by accepting tributes. If you ask how much money exists in the amateur radio world, it would stun you how much money exists to some of the people that are amateur. Look at, how many have heard of the Radio Club of America?
Yeah.
That organization is to promote radio itself, radio communications, not just amateur radio, but commercial. And promote it to the colleges and schools and to bring more people in engineering and the radio itself. It has 400 members, but it consists of almost completely hams. Even though it's focused on industry as well as education, almost all the key leaders are hams, and Tim Duffy's the past president. So there's a cross pollination between the league and RCA. We keep trying to help each other. One doesn't do exactly the same thing. But Duffy and David are going to start looking to raise money to be so we can fund more scholarships and we can provide money for special projects. And let me give you an example of why that's a small amount of money. A gentleman, unfortunately, died who's a member of the Austin Radio Club. No one knew how much money Jim had. Jim told the club he was going to leave them whatever he had left. He had left $4 million. He set $4 million to a scholarship fund out of Austin, which we're setting up now. My point is, there's an immense amount of money amongst the amateur radio members that, if we could be there to help a special project, from establishing expanded computer systems to helping like that. You might want to wonder who the funny people on the board. And let me show you something. If this will work again. We'll switch screens again if it works. Yeah, let's see if this will come up. Michelle, can you see the screen?
Not yet, we still see you twice.
Okay. These, like certain switches. It's a new camera and it sometimes does funny things. There you go. We'll switch, start one more time.
There we go.
Because what does the room look like? Can you see it now?
Oh,
Nope.
no, it was going.
Okay. It should switch if, okay, try it one time. Yes, no?
Yeah, switching. There you
Yes.
go.
There we go.
Okay, what you should see is a picture of the front row of a board meeting.
Yes,
That front row is the president, vice presidents, attorneys. You can see it's not a very elegant setup. This is what the rest of it looks like. The vice directors sit in a row behind the directors. There is a common phrase they're saying amongst the vice directors is what we're looking at, but I won't repeat that because there are ladies in the room. This is what it actually looks like when we run it. The people in the room are fairly interesting. The gentleman right here to the right of David Woolweaver, third person from the left of the screen, that's Dick Norton, N6 AA. Dick Norton is one of the leading experts in the United States on stealth technology. How many of you have heard of the night call? The F-117 we used in Iraq?
yep,
Science, stealth technology for it. He has more black security clearance than you've got pieces of paper in your notebook. The DOD would declare him a national hero, but they can't because they have to disclose what he did. The caliber of the people in the room, excluding me, I'm the guy they don't know how I got in the room. But you have 8 lawyers in the room, and don't make fun. I'll tell you why the lawyers are important in a minute. You have 8 lawyers in the room. You have almost the entire room are engineers, as well as being anything else. Mostly double E's. I'm aerospace. We have a couple of mechanical engineers. You have people who teach college. You have people who teach high school. You have people, half the room is retired, half still works. You have people who are authors. Bud Hipsley, who's the Roanoke Division Director, has written one of the antenna books that we sell. Fred Hopengarten is the author of the antenna zoning book. I think it's the second or third publication that is the Bible for how to get your towers approved from cities and municipalities. He's also a lawyer. He carries 2 cents. He writes, he's a lawyer. But you have also sitting in the room one of the senior network engineers for Apple. She is the vice director of the Pacific Division. I think I could have gone back to, I can't pronounce.
yes,
You also have a lady in the room who ran Fox Network's entire server farm. So the
Yeah.
people in the room are fairly accomplished and are focused. Room disagrees with itself, like any other club. But everyone in the room is there because they love amateur radio. So the talent in the room that is working for the benefit of amateur radio is actually really stunning if you look at all the resumes. In January, the league changed. I said we're 100 years old. We just started growing up in January. Up until 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we were run by a gentleman by the name of Hugh Sumner. Kate said that. I think he was CEO for 37 years. And he was the principal key control person for the league and amateur radio. And headquarters and the board were mostly subservient to Dave. He did a lot of very good things for amateur radio. He earned the name Mr. Amateur Radio. Dave actually has forgotten more about amateur radio than every one of us together can ever learn. If you ask him what happened in 1952 in January, he will tell you. If you ask him what happened at the World Radio Conference 15 years ago, he will tell you. He's still an advisor to us. But when he stepped down, the board became more in control of the league. Tom Gallagher was elected CEO. He quit. We've selected Howard Nickel as the current CEO. But the point of what I'm trying to make is that the board has now become much more involved in how the league works. In January, there's a shift in emphasis inside the league. The league for many years was kind of an insular organization. One of the major things we've been trying to change is whose league is it? The question is it yours or does it belong to headquarters? If you've kept up with some of the controversy over the past couple of years, that has been a principal point of disagreement within the boardroom. Do the people you elect, me, David, any of the other people you saw in those pictures, do they work for you or do they work for the board? That fight turned out to be in the favor of the members. David and I have been fighting this for about 10 years to try and refocus the league to pay attention to what you need, you want, budget. And that's been a small resistance group within the board director, actually, Teacher, Dick North, and David or me running the scope. In 10, 4 new elected. Not Rich, Fred Hopengarten, he's the lady who ran the server farms. Fred, of course, is the intent zoning book. Mike Ritz is considered him a little strange. Races cars. He wins by the way. And then Buck Hipsley, who writes the book. The result of that is the league completely changed direction in January. It's now focused on updated attention. One of the things we've done with Tom is focus on telling who we are. Everyone in this knows amateur radio. If you go into your neighborhoods, how many people in the neighborhood know what amateur radio is? How many people in school know what amateur radio is? How many people are trying to drive students into radio communications and RF? Because we have not sold ourselves to the general public. With the new group of directors, I'm sorry?
I said I would say it's probably a little different in Oklahoma and Texas than it is in most of the country though, just because of the nature of our emergencies.
Tell me how it's different. I don't disagree. We can go ahead so we can talk about that.
I just think that with all of our local emergencies that we have here with tornadoes and hurricanes, that we're probably more driven, that we have, that's why we probably have more amateur radio operators.
And it's more well known.
In terms of radio operators, you're correct. In terms of the public knowing what we do, that's what concerns us. If you look at, going back up,
You're right, Michelle.
we used to have, as an organization, a great deal of support in Washington. That was allowed to lapse. One of the things we started doing was try to get support back in Washington for amateur radio. Again, our block of frequencies are wanted by everyone. We need support to keep them. We need support to get funding for commercial communication. We sent an invitation to all the major federal agencies in Washington. We met with them in June 12th. There were two things that came out of that meeting. We had Chief Technology Officer at FEMA, NTIA, the who's who in Washington. They said two things. By the way, they were all hands. They said that one of the most important things we do is emergency communications. The government looks at us as supplies. Michelle, all the work that's done in Oklahoma and Texas is they see that as important. They see that we have to be there. One of the senior leaders said, we have all the money in the world. We can buy anything we want, and we do. And we know one thing. We know that a big one is coming. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know when it's coming, but we know it's coming. We also know what we have is going to fail. Instead, if we do not have amateur radio behind us, we will have a major problem and extreme difficulty responding to that emergency. We're encouraging us to enhance the emergency communications aspect of amateur radio. One aspect of that is that we are going to hire a new emergency communication director at headquarters. Before the title emergency communications manager, Mike Corey held the job. We've argued for years that position needs to be a person of extreme or at least dedicated experience in emergency communications. The job qualifications, I think, were finished last night at a committee vote. She is Director of Emergency Management, and he will be someone from the field who has probably a CompTIA, CommL, who has experience as an amateur radio operator, emergency communications, part with federal state. We will end up having someone at headquarters to work with all local units to provide more support, more equipment, what treatment need, and to work with the federal agencies. The other thing that people in Washington said is that we do a poor job of telling people who we are. And that is one of the efforts that a new group that the EC set up. When we met in Dayton, one of the things that I and the others asked for is we started a new enhanced communications program to reach out, not just to the members so that we can find out what you need and then fix it, but also to industry and do a communications program to the world to tell them who we are again. But Michelle, that person will probably be hired within the next 6 months and will be there to help all the local clubs. Does anyone have any questions before I keep going? I can keep talking for a long time. You'll get tired of me if I do.
I think one thing is the election process. I know that I've watched that over the years, and it's kind of obtuse on the director election coming up. Is that something where we vote electronically or not?
Not. Every 3 years, 5 directors and vice directors stand for election. We're still using paper ballots. We went to electronic balloting about 3 years ago because we thought it would save money. It costs $33,000 every time we hold an election. And we thought we would save money. So we went to electronic voting. It was a disaster. Only 10% of the members in the divisions where we did electronic voting ever voted. The normal voting turnout in a paper ballot election is not less than 25, generally not more than 33%. The West Gulf has about 12,000 members, which means in any general election, 3,500 to 4,000 are those who determine the outcome of the election. And because Oklahoma is such a tightly knit unit, Oklahoma may determine the elections this year. But the ballot process, everyone has to submit a nomination petition. The Ethics and Election Commission will determine. Then you put on the ballot, the ballots are mailed. This year they'll be mailed about the middle of September. You should get them about the 1st of October. Then the ballots are due back in by November 16th, I believe. And then the ballots are counted. If the incumbents are elected or new people are elected, they will take office officially January 1st for the new board meeting. Mark, did that answer the question you had?
Yeah, it did. The only other thing is, just like normal elections, if you're a member, if you join today, can you still become a voting member, or is there a cutoff date on that?
There is a cutoff, but if you join today, you'd be allowed to vote. If you have family membership that means everyone in the family is allowed to vote. So when the ballots come out, if you've got a family membership, make certain everybody in the family gets a ballot. We had a problem with that about 10 years ago. When we were doing the balloting, headquarters made a mistake and they sent only one ballot per family membership, and it took some scrambling to fix that. But the ballots are staging. Although you'd think that we'd mail them all at once, we don't. They're mailed in units, and if you ask me what that unit is, I have no clue because headquarters doesn't really tell us. It's not a secret. They don't even know until they start packaging them up. So Norman may get their ballots first before Midland gets theirs. El Paso may get theirs next before Dallas gets theirs. We don't know.
Probably whatever will fit in that Chevy they take to the post office.
Bicycle?
We have a question over here.
Question from Jim. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Okay, you alluded earlier to how headquarters, how things have changed at the league and how that the board is more in control, whereas the staff of headquarters had been more in control at one time. And I'm not asking you to badmouth anybody, but I'm curious, what is different? Give me an example of something that would have been done one way when headquarters was doing things, as opposed to now that the board is more in control. Give me an example of something that has changed or that you want to change.
Well, I'll go back to the IMCOM manager. Before the IMCOM manager was under control of headquarters, and his only job was to go to HAMFest. He really didn't have any training in emergency communications and couldn't back you up. Now the board is taking over control of that. We're going to hire someone that will report directly to the CEO, not to a low-level person, and that person is going to be in charge of emergency communications. If you look at clubs, for example, how many of you think your club's important?
Yeah.
That's not a trick question. Okay, here's one major change. Before January, there were people at headquarters in positions to make control decisions that believe that clubs are dead. That clubs consist of nothing but old men who are curmudgeons who show up on Saturday morning to drink coffee and tell stories.
Hey.
And that.
Now, we're not saying that doesn't happen, but
Mark, I didn't intend to talk about you, but. That was a prevalent attitude at headquarters. You might want to make a book that that's no longer the attitude of this board. And let's see, it was at the meeting in July, I sat down with the Director of Operations, Norm Forsaro, and we had a conversation that resulted in the following. There will be a job description drafted and sent out, and then a public notice with a do-right. It'll be in a month. We're going to hire an affiliated club coordinator at league level, not just at local level, whose sole job is to work with every club to not wait for you to call up and go, can I have something? It's going to be they're going to push stuff out. We used to have a package for new members that every club had in its hands and they could give it to a new member.
we still do.
You don't have that here.
Yeah. We make our
They have
own,
it the other.
We do.
No.
We don't, it's not league stuff, but.
not league stuff,
I
but
mean, I think you, because you're working for it, but the league has not been pushing that out. It is difficult for you to find out how, I don't mean you personally, I mean for clubs to find out who's a member, who's not. Why is it important to a club to find out if you've got a member or a non-member?
affiliate.
It's because if the club signs up, affiliated club, signs up a new member to the league, your club gets $15.
Yeah, we tried.
Of that membership.
Pain in the butt.
Say again?
The procedure for doing
Wait,
that
wait.
is pain in the butt, so we don't do it anymore.
Go ahead, did you hear what Peter said?
I did not, sorry.
The procedure for signing up members through the club is a pain in the butt, so we stopped doing it.
I don't disagree with you. It's one of the things that the club coordinator is going to change. If you want to date headquarters, think about 19. We are still running internal servers. We have databases that stopped being published 10 years ago. The league has been hacked twice, once by the Chinese, once by the Ukrainians, because the staff people did not maintain the security patches on the Apache website. Mark, about GE program.
Okay.
You do. There are 14 VECs, volunteer exam coordinators in the United States. The league is one of them. By the way, the league makes about $485,000 a year off of that. But the system is just like the system to sign up new members.
How much do they spend off of that?
Of the 485?
Yeah. I mean, is they losing money on the process?
Say again, sir?
Are they losing money on the process?
On VEC program, we are not.
Okay.
It covers the cost. And remind me to come back about what we are losing money on in a minute. But the significance of the program we've got is kludgy.
No doubt.
It is out of date. David and I have been fighting internally before January to turn everything we have into an electronic system, just like Laurel has now. There's an internal joke within the board when you propose a new program as to why it's not going to ever get implemented. It's called, it will take IT time. The IT department doesn't function. And one reason it does, go back to your question, what's changed, is because there's been resistance within headquarters to change. That stopped in January. The instructions from the board are if we implement a program, it will be implemented. Or when we have less than 87 employees. The purpose is the league is going to, the headquarters is going to start refocusing on you. We are behind on that beat program. We're just now starting the test. Electronic transmission of the exam results. We've got to catch up to what the world's doing. That's just one of the things we've got to change. What the new board has to accomplish is staggering in terms of bringing us up into the 21st century. Some of you in the room have great experience with websites, with servers. We got to point out Ria Jaram, who's the director from the Hudson Division, ran Fox server farms. Businesses these days don't run server farms on servers sitting inside their house.
Nope, they're on the cloud.
We are. One of the, in fact, we assigned Ria to do this, she put her in charge of it. We're looking at moving all our servers into the cloud. It should have been done 10 years ago, but that's one of the changes we have to make. And I'm picking on anybody at headquarters in by name. The organization was focused on kind of being a big hand club and stopped paying attention to the fact that it is more, it has a job to do, which is taking care of amateur radio in your interest. So it's a huge strength that's starting. Part of that May meeting with Washington was to reestablish the links with Washington so that we go back to Congress, and I'll come back to the legislature for a minute. We go back to Washington, we show up with help. The Department of Defense, FEMA, NTIA, every federal agency we want back and behind us. That is a multi-year program because just showing up one time going, I got barbecue sandwiches isn't enough. There are advisory committees with every major federal agencies and often with state agencies. We haven't been members of those for 15 years. That is going to change starting in January. And by January, because it takes that long to get memberships on those. We meet with Congress, I think the fourth week in September. We meet the executive committee. Remember I said the executive committee is the operating arm when we're not, the board's not in session. We're going back to meeting with all the key committee chairmen to reestablish the relationship we need to move legislation or stop it. And I'll come back to legislation in a minute, but stopping is very, very important. If you look at what else changed, there's been no real effort from the league to communicate all of you, any other members, with what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How do we do it? That's the new communications committee. By the way, it's not established by the president, it's established by the board. That's another change. Although under the operating bylaws and standing orders, the league has the Administrative Finance Committee, Ethics and Election, and Program Services Committee. We have operating committees that are directly appointed by the board. One of which is the Communication Committee, which its purpose is to reestablish communications with the members and with the clubs. And that's going to take a month to a year to get established, but you'll see more coming out directly providing information to, which will pay attention to the minutes of the board.
We have another question
You
here.
agree?
Yeah.
Forward.
Yeah.
We got,
Yeah.
we got board stalkers.
One of the things
Okay.
you've talked about,
Hang on, we got a question from here. Hold
one
on.
of the things that you've talked about is emergency services and how all that's going to be coordinated and so forth. And that's a real, true interest of mine and that several other people in this club. One of the things that we're seeing is that months and months and months ago, a list was compiled from Oklahoma and sent in for you guys to coordinate, so to speak, put it together and get back out to us with, you know, some plans.
Aries Connect.
And it's never happened.
The question, what list did you send?
The Aries Connect,
Sorry.
for the Aries Connect setup,
Aries Connect.
As to what's being done at that, I'll defer to Mark Conklin, who, the Aries Connect program was established as part of the Public Service Working Group to come up with what they were calling the second century for Aries NTS. That program is not working well. If you look
Really?
at how many people participating in Aries Connect across the country, it's almost nobody.
yeah.
The idea was good. It's an expensive program in terms of running. But it's not working well because it's cludgy. Again, another example of a program that's cludgy.
It's a complete failure.
In the July meeting, that was reviewed, that we've got to come up with a system that you will use, that North Texas, South Texas, West Texas, Oklahoma will use, the Delta Division will use. The purpose is to get information, but it's so difficult to use, and the wrong information's into it. We're looking at coming up with another program. In terms of exactly what you sent headquarters, I don't know to whom you sent it, but if you have, if you get it to me, or give it to Michelle or Mark,
No,
get it
it's-
to me, I'll find out.
We sent it to Corey, and they just haven't loaded any of it yet.
Okay. Okay, you just answered the question. Mike Corey was
That was
permitted
last
to
year.
retire in January.
Well, this is last October, but yeah, what's the difference?
Well, Mike Corey ran emergency communications, but his job tasked inside headquarters under the old board was to go to Hamfest. He's a nice guy, by the way, he's a really nice guy. But he did not have the training to deal with any of this.
No.
And headquarters did not give it to him. We asked that he be given the training. But it's ComT, ComL, Octocom, didn't happen. Headquarters wouldn't do it. So the decision was made, this has to change. That position is run by Ken right now. Ken's background is not really in emergency communications. He's holding the fort open. The new person we hire as the emergency communication manager's job is completely revamped MCOM. And then, he will be the person responding to you. You actually will get a response from that person. You'll actually have staff that can do it, because Mike had no staff. You couple that with Aries Connect was a great idea, but it was costing us, I think, $11,000 a year, and almost no one's using it. Mark has been working to develop a database for Oklahoma that is similar to the database I think is being used in South Texas. And he and the other section managers are going to be talking about, actually the other SECs, are going to talk about how can they use that within West Gulf, and it'll become the de facto program for the West Gulf. And it may become the de facto program for the country. If you look at the Aries program that was reported out by headquarters, it proposed training. That training is based on what the West Gulf does. The original training manuals were written out of South Texas, then adopted by Oklahoma, North Texas, South, and West Texas. Tennessee has adopted the same training manual. And that was modified, unfortunately modified, but adopted by the headquarters. So I make that point because not only are we, Oklahoma and Texas, the two targets from Mother Nature, the development of programs to make emergency communications function are principally coming out of Oklahoma and Texas. So I don't know, if it went to Mike Corey, it died in the fall, and there's no one there to pick it up. Again, give me the information and we'll talk to Ken and see what we can get for you. But that's one of the gaps we're trying to fill. It will get better, but not until we hire that income manager, which we should start soliciting in September. And if you persuade Mark to take the job, we'd love to have him.
Well, yeah, I'm already on that team. I'm already on that team with Mark Conklin doing the web stuff, so yeah, local stuff.
Mark, by the way, is very, very good at what he does.
Yeah, if you go to ariesconnect.org, that's our site.
So you're looking at communications, you're looking at club coordination, you're looking at MCOM. These are just some of the things that are going to change. There will be developed a major membership push to reach out to the members, probably starting around Christmas or the beginning of the year, depending on when we can get people in place. You're going to see backroom stuff like we talked about. We're going to move into the cloud. That will save us an enormous amount of money. Someone asked about cost and losing money. There are things that we consider, the league considers member benefits that we're willing to lose money on. How many of you use QSL cards? Somebody in the room has to use a QSL card.
Yeah, they're up. Jim is N2EST, he does ham tunes, the QSL card stuff, so he's our hero.
The QSL Bureau handles an enormous volume. The fees that are paid aren't enough to cover the cost. It costs us about $35,000 a year to run that bureau, which is a cost we're willing to absorb. If any of you have been trading or sending QSL cards through the league, you'll know that last year the league raised the cost substantially for doing that. In January, one of the changes the new board made was to stop that. We ordered that all the pricing for the QSL cards will rotate back to, I think it's 2011 prices, because that's a member benefit. We're not intending to make money off of it. How many of you use a logbook of the world? Anybody?
Everybody.
Okay. How happy would you be if we terminated the program?
It depends on what you came up with.
On the other side of the camp, you can't kill me right now. Logbook of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Logbook was developed on almost a lark more than 10 years ago. Someone thought it'd be a neat idea. Programmers were hired. 6 weeks after we hired them and paid them, they ran off with the money. We hired another group of programmers, and then about 4 years ago, after the November contest, Logbook of the World crashed and stopped processing. It stopped processing because they wrote the program, there was a maximum number of QSOs written into it. The good news, it started looping, it integrates, it started looping. Mike Keaton, the IT department head, discovered it, fixed it, and that's when the first focus on the fact that no one had paid attention to Logbook World for what, 8 years? There was no single code that was documented. No information how it worked. Since then, we've hired 2 programmers, just 2 more programmers to redo Logbook of the World. If you use it, you see that the interface has gotten better. We are in the process of completely rewriting the code and coming up with what we call Logbook 2.0 that'll be much easier to use. There are 119,000 users of Logbook of the World, worldwide. How much does it cost us to run it here?
I have a question about.
We have a question.
I'm an extensive,
Go ahead.
I'm an extensive Logbook of the World user. You said the interface has changed. The interface has not changed to Logbook of the World. TQSL's interface has changed, but that was not a league doing, that was mostly K1MU, who just got the President's Award. He's not a league, he's not even a league employee, he just fixed it because it needed fixing.
A great deal of the work on Logbook of the World has been done by volunteers because they offered to do it.
Yeah, because it needed to be done.
All the backroom stuff that is making it more stable and work is being done by programmers. We just hired 2 more.
Understood,
But
but
a great deal of the work to make that interface that you're talking about better came from volunteers.
yeah, but
We
not,
probably could
but
have
not
afforded
Logbook
it
of
if we
the
had.
World. Logbook of the World.
But they're parallel tracks as to how we improve each aspect of Logbook of the World.
I can't tell that the
It
Logbook of
currently-
the World interface.
it
changed
currently
at all.
we lose-
You said Logbook of the
250,000
World's
operating.
interface had changed. Logbook of the World's interface has not changed since it started. TQSL's interface has changed dramatically thanks to members of ARRL. So I'm not sure you understand, do you use Logbook of the World? How many thousand
Yes.
QSOs do you have in there? I have something
Sorry,
like, I have something like 15,000 QSOs in there. So I'm a user, I've claimed many awards through it. The Logbook of the World interface has not changed since inception. TQSL has changed because it was broken before, because it was basically stillborn. So please be clear in what you're saying.
I shorthanded my description, I apologize. Because all the work has been done at TQSL, the other work is being done behind the scenes to stabilize. The intent with the new version will be to make everything much easier to use. And that's the reason we hired 2 new programmers. The operation of it costs us $250,000 a year, and again, because it's a member benefit, that's the reason that we're funding that loss. But it's a major asset, excuse me, of the league. And you're correct. Most of the work has been done by volunteers outside the organization. Hold on one second. You get roped up talking about it, so much fun. But, yeah.
And we're running a little low on time. Do you want to take more questions from there, see if anybody has any other questions?
Let me make a couple, address 2 things, and then let's go back to the questions.
Okay.
If all of you remember that the league has made a major effort in the past years to obtain relief from private land use restrictions in amateur radio. The number of homeowners associations that strictly operation amateur radio differ from state to state. You have fewer of those organizations than in Texas or Arkansas. The league introduced a bill that became known as the Amateur Radio Parity Act. It started out as a PRB1 bill. But that bill unfortunately was changed back in 2016 to a bill that was written by the HOAs. It ceased being a parity act. A major effort within the league from the resistance group that now is in control of the board was to stop that bill, because had it been passed, it would eliminate amateur radio in any subdivision anywhere in the country. If you notice the minutes in January, the league withdrew that bill from Congress and withdrew it from the FCC because it was such a bad bill. When we went to Congress to explain why we were withdrawing the bill and show them the legal analysis of the bill, they gasped. They didn't realize how bad the bill was. But the league has not abandoned the efforts to get legislation passed. A lot of you sent letters in to try and support the old program. Those were effective in making friends in Congress. We have a lot of support, but what we have to do now is build up enough support to get legislation passed. Instead of going directly back to Congress, what we're starting to do is go state to state. Eddie Manley is the legislative director for the West Gulf for Oklahoma. We'll be looking at introducing bills into the session in January. The bills will be tower bills. They won't look anything like the ARRL bill. They will specifically permit antennas on towers and verticals. We've already introduced bills in New Hampshire, Maine, I think North Carolina. We missed introducing one in Texas this year because our sponsor backed out. But we're going to start working state by state and working executive branch to see if we can get regulations that will be mandated to eliminate some of these restrictions. And one of my concerns is, how many of you have satellite dishes at home? Anybody?
Yeah, about half.
Okay? Those used to be illegal. Homeowners associations prohibited antennas of any kind. In 1996, the Federal Communications Act was amended, and it set up what they call the OTAR rules, over-the-air reception devices. It mandated that you'd be permitted to put up satellite dishes without restriction. So you can put up a dish, don't have to ask an HOA. You can put up a tower with a TV antenna on it without permission. You can put up wireless broadband antennas without permission. The HOAs didn't want it passed, the builders didn't want it passed. HOAs agreed to the builder who write these restrictions into the rules because they want a subdivision to look a certain way. It's all marketing. The result of that is that everyone in this room, everyone in the country who has an amateur radio license is treated as a second-class citizen. You can have a TV antenna, you can have a satellite dish, you can have a Ford F-150 in your driveway, you can put a picture symbol on your door, but you can't operate amateur radio. Starting back in the 50s, 40s and 50s, people with those restrictions prohibited people who were of race, a color, a religion, from being members of that neighborhood. Those were eliminated. That's called red. Where amateur radio stands now across the country is we are redlined. We are second-class citizens. I don't know about you, but I'm not really interested in being second class because I'm not, and neither any of you in this room. Amateur radio operators are not second-class citizens. And that's the push we're making in Congress, state legislation. We're going to stop permitting the developers, builders to treat all of us as something they would like not to have in the neighborhood. But that information will get more to you as we come up with programs in Oklahoma and Texas. And Michelle, let's go back to asking questions. But I want everyone to know that we have not given up on that. That's the reason we're meeting with Congress in September. Michelle,
Sounds good.
you have a question?
Questions in the room? Back. Go ahead, Tara.
Okay, mine is more of a comment and suggestion than a question.
Yes.
I was a president of a club in Arkansas and members of other clubs. And the EOC in our areas was really not interested in having ham radio as part of their assets. And, you know, I think it would be really great if FEMA would step in and, you know, emphasize the importance of having the active Aries or races or whatever group attached to the EOC. That's my comment.
Michelle.
Of course, that's not a problem right here locally for us, as they're all members of the club.
We're in the EOC. We are the EOC.
Your comment about the legislation that may come up, and I guessed it may be with regards to amateur radio frequencies, was somewhat alarming to me. Is there anything else you can say that maybe help us to prepare or to do something to make that easier for the ham community?
I'm going to ask you to repeat the question because the audio stopped for a second. So you're asking, ask that question again.
N5AUS, this is NI5G. Can you copy me now?
I copy you clear.
My comment was when you spoke about the upcoming legislation, which I ascertained was pertaining to ham radio frequencies. It was somewhat alarming to me, and I'm concerned about it. And is there anything that you can say that might help amateurs to prepare for it, to help fight the battle? Back to you.
There are two answers to that. If we're talking about the frequencies themselves, that's where the league comes in. Those decisions are made at the FCC or the ARRL, the National Amateur Radio Union, allocates frequencies around the world, both for commercial use, government use, and for amateur radio. The World Radio Council meets in 2019, I think, coming up. They actually sit down and study proposals like the French proposal to reassign 2 meters. By the way, that's not even on the agenda yet. Before it gets to the agenda, it's going to be 4 years of studies, and the whole world is lining up to stop that. At that level, locally, there's not much any one of us individually can do, because that's our international vice president, Jay Bellows, our president. Those are the folks who represent us. The world's divided into regions. We are one of the more powerful region representatives, we being the lead. If it comes up before the FCC, that's a different issue. If they're proposing to reassign any part of our frequencies of band, then yes. How you help then is you will receive requests from the league to file comments. The FCC actually reads the comments. They have people that do it. So if you receive that request, yes, file a comment. It counts. It's like the letter some of you signed to send to Congress for the last bill. They read the letters. Let me be more accurate. Because before I became director, I was legislative director for Texas and wrote and passed most of the legislation that we've passed. We passed a flagpole bill, which no one figured out was actually a vertical antenna bill. Now you can have verticals in Texas. We passed solar legislation, we passed standby generator legislation, and we've been working on the tower bill. But when we tried to do that, we sent requests out to the hams in the states that contact your state reps, your senators. That was very effective. Your letters to Congress were very effective. They don't read all the letters, the content, they'll read one of them. Then they count them. It goes back to every vote counts, every one of you counts. Decisions are made in Congress and at the FCC sometimes by small numbers. So if we ask you to write to the FCC or file a comment, or you see something you think you ought to file a comment on, do it. It makes a difference. Fortunately, right now, there's no major effort to remove any of our frequencies. The efforts normally come through pick General Electric. They want to run a temporary test program. They want to use part of, pick a band. That's the camel's nose under the tent. That's what we fight. If you look at the agenda for the EC when we meet, half what we pay attention to is meeting with our FCC counsel, who, by the way, is brand new, David Sodal. He used to be an attorney for the FCC commissioners, so we have much better representation now. But we'll sit down with him and decide how we're going to respond and what we're going to follow in response. If it's at the state level, look at Eddie Manley, Kevin Odell. They're asking you to contact your legislators on something that's good or bad before they open the legislature. Send a letter. Send a fax. Make a phone call. They log the phone calls, they log the letters, they log the faxes. If you send an email, you might as well put it in a trash can. They get such a huge volume of emails, they don't listen to them. So the old-fashioned way works. Send a letter, send a fax, make a phone call. They log it all and it counts. So my answer was broader than what you were talking about on the frequencies, but the key is, if any of this comes up, the league will be asking you to help at whatever level it is, and each one of you can play an important role in that. We defeated the cell phone legislation in Texas that would have eliminated mobile amateur radio because they had such a heavy turnout writing letters and sending faxes. They count.
Great. We have another question for you. Oh, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you were saying earlier that like the public has no clue of who we are. Has the ARRL ever attempted to run any public service announcements on TV or anything like that? They don't stand out. I'm comparing it, look at the NRA. You know, they need to get more involved in the public's eye, because we're not out there. You know, has any thought been given to that?
Yes, that's one of the programs I and a few others have been working on for about the past 10 years. We've been trying to get the league to start doing outreach. The fact that you know what the headquarters is, or you're a member, while it's important, doesn't solve the problem we have with the rest of the world. Again, we've got 156,000 members. Again, we're the size of Midland, Texas. Unfortunately, we don't have Midland Toral, but there has been at headquarters no effort to go out and sell ourselves. That is one of the key points that people in Washington make. We have to do that, because if we show up in Washington, if we show up in Congress, they don't know who we are. Why should they help us? It used to be, because I was doing the legislature in Texas, I went to see a senator or a state rep and said, I am from amateur radio. Here's what we want you to help pass in terms of a bill or stop. There were no Pams in the Texas legislature. I don't think you've got any in the Oklahoma legislature either. They all knew about amateur radio. It was either my uncle was a ham, or Mr. Wilkins down the street was a ham. All these guys have been, they've been elected to county and city offices, and they had seen us show up in emergency. They knew what we were. That was before. Rhea Gyre, who's the director out of Hudson Division, she went to an IEEE meeting in New York. Those are electrical engineers. You would think they knew what amateur radio was. None of them had any clue what amateur radio was. Go. The answer to your question? Yes. One of the things that you did, start telling the world, not just yourself, telling the world who we are. If it's come up in a year, it's going to take a lot to develop it. And let me make one other that the membership we have is holding fairly steady. It's down a little bit, but back to the where some of the cycle people quit producing. 47% of the people who get a license do it for one reason. Anyone know the reason? Mark?
No.
You should.
No.
That's pretty hard. They get their license because they want to be involved. They want to be involved in emergency communications or public service. That's 47% of people who get a license. Now, why do most people quit in not doing anything with their license?
Because the band is dead.
That's where you give up on DX. They drop their license, become inactive because they don't know what to do next. One of the problems we have is a new podcast about What Now that's targeting that. We also have a program we're spending about $500,000 on called long distance learning that's designed to provide online resources for people who are new as well as experienced hams to help them get past the first hurdle. What we learn is that people who get their license don't know how to connect the radio to it.
That's why we have Elmer Night.
Yeah.
That's why we have our Elmer night, and every Tuesday night we get together with about 20 or 30 of those folks, and the Elmers become the experts become the newbies, and the newbies become the experts.
You're unique in doing that. You're one of the better clubs in the country that does this. Most clubs don't. When I first got into amateur radio, I had people all over me trying to teach me things. They cried a lot at night because they learned I was kind of slow. Networking is a key. They want to join a club. It's difficult, not in your region, but in other parts of the country, they don't know where the clubs are. That's the league's fault, do a bad job telling people who just get their license how to contact their club. A lot of clubs don't have a mentoring program. The league is locally, we've changed that, where new hams are given the opportunity to make contact with the club and to get guidance. That's part of this new communications program, part of the $500,000 we're spending to develop the resources to help you contact them as well as us to keep them in. Because if we don't get new hands, all of us in this room are going to get older and older. Some will get cuter, but some will.
Hey, John,
And
one of the things
Yes,
you and
ma'am.
I had talked about was the, getting the YL column back in QST. But as we're all talking here today, one of the thoughts came to my mind, you know, what I don't really see in QST is a club highlight. And maybe that where if other clubs learn what other clubs are doing by highlighting and doing an article on a club, maybe that's a way to help other clubs grow.
I thank you for reminding me of this. One of the things that came out of the meetings that we had in July, there has been no real outreach from the divisions to the clubs. I announced at HAMCOM in Plano and started the first meeting in July 13th in Dallas. As director, we're going to start putting meetings around the division with all the club officers of all the clubs. What the league doesn't know, what I don't know, what we need to know, what do you need as a club, or what does that club need for us to help you, one, stay alive. Some clubs need help with setting up websites. You've got Mark, you don't need help at all, it's brilliant. Other clubs don't know how to do that. Other clubs don't know how to become a 501c3. One of the things that we started when I went back to the July meeting is that part of the club coordinator program is we're going to put out a book. Steve Ford is public. We're not looking at the costs. We're going to end up with probably a column in QST or push out a newsletter to all the clubs that's going to go through and say, how do you start a club? Form an LLC, corporation.